Hey guys, I'm Brent.
I'm Lila, and you can find us on the web at www.braintrustlive.com.
That's right.
It's been a big week for all sorts of news, you guys. International news,
Holy
massive
Moses.
explosions, unlike anything you've ever seen in
Oh my God, that was so crazy.
my beloved city of Beirut.
I was going to say, you were the first person I thought of, obviously.
Yeah,
I mean, I don't know anybody who's living there right now, or I probably would have thought of them. But
right.
I mean, you
right. My parents
lived there before. I mean, briefly.
My parents lived in Beirut.
You were there for
visited Beirut for an extended period.
I was going to say, you were there for long enough that I feel like you were like, yeah, I lived in my parents' apartment there.
I was there long enough that I care about Beirut.
Of course. Yeah.
I mean, I care about everywhere, but like specifically care about specific locations. In any case, this explosion in Beirut, I think, has one notable lesson for us to learn, and many just like notable lessons for everyone on Earth to learn about why you want functional government. Because there is no circumstance under which almost 3,000 tons of ammonium nitrate should be stored in really anywhere, but also a city with people in it.
Right.
Without
where signs had been there for years that this is problematic.
And the reason that this was able to occur in Lebanon is because their government is borderline nonsense. And so there was nobody there to regulate in an effective way, and protect the people of Beirut and the people within 150 miles of Beirut from this massive tragedy. And so, you know, I have firsthand experience with large-scale disasters that lead me to know what the long-term consequences of something like this might be. There's going to be long-term health consequences, but also there's short-term consequences in that this like destroyed half of the city. Yeah. Like my luckily, all of my parents' friends seem to be okay, and their closest friends happened to not be in Beirut at the time. But you know, their windows were blown out. Like they had to have people go and figure out what to do about like their, the property damage. And I think just the idea of like an entire city's windows blowing out seems, I know that's like only one minor piece of this puzzle and like not the biggest part of the crisis.
Well, it gives some context for like what,
but like, think about what it would be to have to source enough glass to replace every window in the city you currently live in. Like that, for some reason, that stat really like blew my mind, even though, you know, there's also like a huge homelessness crisis that's emerging because of this.
Hundreds of people dead. I mean, they don't know
people
how many people
who are injured
dead.
And dead. Right. Yeah. I mean, there's like every scale of humanitarian crisis, but like, just imagine what it would be. And this is a country where they probably can imagine this because they have lived through some really violent eras with, you know, and specifically a lot of violence from Israel being, you know, doing damage to their city for, you know, a decade. But like, just think about what it is to replace every window in a city. That's crazy to think about.
Yeah. Well, and when you don't have a functional government, it becomes crazier.
Becomes much harder. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a little bit of controversy there because there's some calls to bring, not calls from, I think, people that are thinking rationally, but calls to bring France in, which was their colonial government.
Oh, no.
Just because they feel so poorly equipped to deal with this, with their own government, but like, don't agree to be under colonial rule just because something terrible happened. That's never a good idea. I don't know anyone
us for
who
help
supports
because
it.
We don't have functional government either. And also our president thought that it was a bomb.
Well, it's also, and lied about it to them. I mean, like announced
it. Said in a press conference that his own aides had told him that that's what it was. And they were all like, no, we didn't actually say that.
Yeah. Right. Don't just also don't underestimate the power of public safety regulations. Yeah. Because this is something our own administration is actively interested in dismantling. And like, this is a good example of why you want those, why you want there to be government inspectors, why you want there to be rules about what can and can't be done in areas that civilians and frankly anyone is in, and why you want someone to keep track of what's coming and going, why you want active, you know, like the right kind of customs enforcement, because I think this ammonium nitrate actually came off of a Russian ship at some point in 2014. In any case, nightmare story. On a less dramatic scale, but a scale that also makes you think about the dysfunctional nature of our government. We learned this week that there have actually been 15 Americans that have been hospitalized for drinking hand sanitizer.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
So disinfecting your insides, as Donald Trump suggested, will land you in the hospital,
Yeah.
but also
and
people
also
actually did it.
Right. And there's also been actually a lot of reports for you to check your hand sanitizer, because a lot of like imported hand sanitizer they have decided is toxic actually now too. So like LA County Public Health just posted like a graphic of like all the hand sanitizers that you need to like get out of your house right now, because they will kill you even if you are just using them as hand sanitizers. So
I think also is a good time to remind everyone that we actually have learned in the intervening few months that surfaces are not really how people are contracting COVID. It's mostly airborne. So as much as you should keep your hands clean, because that's a good way to not get anyone sick with anything, including COVID, like hand sanitizer is not your best defense against COVID. A mask is.
Yes.
Wear a mask.
Yes.
And then also fill out your census.
You guys, we have talked about this before, but there have, been, it seems like every day there's something new going on in the census. And it seems like it's flown under the radar because there's big shit going on right now. And like, we get that. And also I feel like a lot of people were paying very close attention to whether they were going to have the citizenship question on there. And then the Supreme Court decided that no, it wasn't going to go on there. And then I think everybody was just sort of like, oh, well, the census is fine now. The census is not fine because they've had to delay it multiple times. They've delayed enumerators coming into your home. That's about to start, by the way. So like, that's a reason enough to do it. Like if you're scared of somebody knocking at your door right now, which a lot of, for COVID reasons, then you can alleviate that by doing the census. But like there's, the Census Bureau had hoped that they were going to get an extension to report the reapportionment numbers, like basically like congressional apportionments, to April of next year. But it seems like that's not going to happen. So they're going to have to finish like by December 1st, which I think was basically the original day. But so now they've also had to like cut off the amount of days of counting, enumerating they're going to do, like door knocking. So like, it's going to be a mess. There's also some discussion of whether Trump is going to cross-check these against like DMV records to see how many people are actually undocumented, and then maybe not count the undocumented people like in the final numbers. Like all of these things could end up in court, but like what you can do is to fill it out. It takes 5 minutes.
Yeah.
So like if you haven't done it, do it. If you know people who haven't done it, do it. Even if you don't know people who haven't done it, ask people if they have. Like this is a thing that like we can all be doing, and it is easy. Like if you are going around talking about how important it is to vote, you're not wrong. But like throw in the importance of doing the census like while you're at it. Really, they're connected in so many ways. 100%. Your ability to have meaningful representation to vote. I was going to say, there's already a lot of tied to the census. There's already concerns about an undercount here in California, leading to lost representation in Congress. Like most people who look at these things thinks that we're going to lose at least one seat in the and we have in the reapportionment. Some of the lowest representation in Congress of anyone per capita, because think about what it is to be in the largest state in the union in the Senate. Yeah, so we already lack representation. Do it. Tell your friends. And avoid people pestering you in your homes, because nobody wants that. Yeah. If there's one thing that I would like to not invite into my life at any point during this crisis, it's strangers knocking on my door. Exactly. And I certainly don't. If I can take a 5-minute action on the internet that prevents a stranger from knocking on my door, that's the goal. I remember early on in this progress, or in this whole situation, I had a door knocker, somebody who wanted me to like sign some petition for like some ballot thing, or to get somebody on a ballot or something like that. And I was like, sir. And then he said you could use your own pen. Oh, that's right. I forgot. I was like, first off, I don't have a pen. Right. Second, I never have pens. I'm always searching for a pen in this house. Right. I'm not trying to have a stranger at my door. Get away from me, please. Don't leave. Don't knock on my door unless I am expecting you. Right. The other day, a UPS guy knocked at my door, and I nearly lost my shit completely. And he was gone by the time he was just telling me I had a package. I mean, he was doing what you do, and I had already lost my shit completely. Yeah. So do the census. Is the message. Yeah. And the census could help you have an opportunity to have exciting election results, which we will get to discuss. Yeah, we will. Because this was we told you the August 4th primaries would be exciting. Yes. And like so much of the time we were right. Right. So, but even as we were telling you how exciting they could be, we were telling you to not get your hopes up about Cori Bush actually winning that primary. We were excited that she was probably going to do better than last time. She had a better funded campaign. There were other groups that were involved, like pushing her to the, and advertising on her behalf. And we were like, well, she's probably not going to lose by 20 points like she did last time.
Yeah.
And lo and behold, she won.
And this was like a race where Brent was texting me updates and I was starting to feel stressed because I was just like, I was planning to not pay attention to the counting in this race because I didn't expect her to win and I was going to feel sad.
There were some early calls for Clay.
Right.
Because he was so far ahead in some of the early voting that came in, which presumably was what they had counted first. She won by massive day of voting, which we've seen a lot in some of these races where progressives have had late surges, because that's often sort of like when that is going to happen. Also, they're less funded. So it's like you sort of get all of your action sort of late there anyway. But it was wild to me. Even when I was seeing people like saying that she had won on Twitter, I was like, I need like the AP to tell me this had actually happened.
It was like Justice Democrats declared victory, and Brent texted us that, and we were all like, well, let's just wait and see.
Right. Yeah.
And she tweeted "not me, us" as soon as she won, which was just like, she's the greatest. So obviously we felt great about that.
Man, that really.
Also, something about that, for some reason, that felt really satisfying to me, not just because I was like, yay, progressives winning, but also because I was just like, we're back. As we have been sitting and watching sort of like Joe Biden bumble his way through what is not really a campaign. It's more just like a hiding strategy. And like been here, we're going to talk a lot about the Veep stakes in a bit. And like, that is going to be depressing. I was just sort of like, I feel like I've been hearing from just people in my life, from people on the internet, that it's time to just grin and bear it. Like it's time to just get on board and grin and bear it. And I have wanted to be like, there has to be something for us too. Like we are here, like someone needs to acknowledge that like we are here. And like, that just felt very satisfying to me because it was like an insurgent candidacy. It was a Justice Democrat. It was somebody that we'd been excited about 2 years ago. It was one of the people that did not win 2 years ago. And so we had been sort of like holding off on being too excited about this. Yeah. But it just felt exciting to be like, the movement is still here.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and it really did feel that way too, because also Rashida Tlaib in Michigan, and that was another one. I texted somebody the night of these primaries. Well, a friend of mine was like texting me about the Kansas Senate primary, which we'll get to in a minute. And he was sort of like sad that Chris Kobach was losing at the time. And I was like, with all due respect, yes, I would like Chris Kobach to win his Senate primary, but also I don't fucking care because I'm watching Cori Bush and Rich. I'm busy here. But even at the time, which was earlier in the evening, I was like, I'm also like trying to not get my hopes up because like, we already told you that we were sort of like not necessarily expecting Cori Bush to win. I was kind of expecting Rashida Tlaib to win, but like there had been all of these reports that was going to be close. And I guess there's reason to believe that because she was running against Brenda Jones, who she only beat by like 900 some votes in a primary that had more people in it last time. And this was a head-to-head matchup. And she was well-funded. And, I think there were
she's the president of the Detroit City Council. So she's somebody with political sway there. It's
she's a known entity. And so I was also hoping Rashida would win, but also just sort of like had, was trying to tamp down my expectations. And then even the headlines that we were getting all night was like, Rashida Tlaib survives primary, fends off a stare from, the moderate wing of the party, blah, blah, blah. She won 2-1.
She crushed Brenda Jones.
It's not close.
And it's the kind of thing where in retrospect, I was like, oh, why would this not be the case? Why wouldn't one of the poorest districts in the nation want a fighter like her to be the representative? Like they especially gain a lot, even though she's controversial, even though she says things that the politician's not supposed to say, they gain a lot from having someone like her with a platform like hers representing them. Why wouldn't that why wouldn't they want to keep having that? I mean,
well, and that's the thing that I think that a lot of people in that district clearly understood. And, Nancy Pelosi actually endorsed her earlier in the week, which I was kind of surprised at because she is kind of like not necessarily a thorn specifically in Nancy Pelosi's side, but like, she's just like mouthy in a way, that wing of the party side. And also like is mouthy in a way that I think that like Nancy Pelosi probably feels like she has to answer for sometimes, Nancy Pelosi, how do you feel about Rashida Tlaib, booing Hillary Clinton or saying she's not going to vote for Joe Biden or whatever it is, but like, when she endorsed her, her statement was something to the effect of like, she's great for her district and she's also like great for the party. And that's what I have said to like a few friends who sort of are like, oh, well, I don't like her because she booed Hillary Clinton, which is like, okay, like fine, I can kind of like get that. But like also but beyond that, she is someone that you want in Congress.
Yes.
Because like she's voting with the party, certainly at a higher percentage than some of these assholes who have been primaried by people from the left that you have, you know, I mean, it's like, would you rather have her or would you rather have like Henry Cuellar, who's voting with Donald Trump, you know, 60% of the time? Like, you know, I mean, I don't understand this line of thinking, and certainly
the left votes with the party like, way more than the center.
Right. They certainly take issue with them sometimes, but I mean, like they are much apt to be there for you in a crunch than some of these other bozos are.
Yeah. But also,
and she's good for her district also. Like she has made sure that like people's water don't get shut off in that district.
Say,
you know, I mean,
she
like there's like
a district that deserves to have someone who
it's one of the poorest districts in the country.
Play centrist games. Her district has
they've got bigger things to worry about.
They have big fish to fry in that district. Like they need someone like her who and they gain a lot from having someone like her who has a platform, because she has a platform that a lot of members of Congress do not, because she's willing to say whatever.
Right.
And that is of huge benefit if you live in a district that has been routinely overlooked at every policy level since the dawn of time.
Right. That's the thing. You know, one of her big and I learned this from, she did some kind of like web town hall or something like that. But like one of the main things that she was running on was this water thing, but specifically in that district and like a block away from one of the high schools, which literally had to like stop using their water fountains there, was built like the giant hockey stadium, like a professional hockey stadium that cost, you know, like tens of, I don't know, who knows?
Millions,
I mean, you know, millions and millions and millions of dollars. And it's like, if that is what's going on in your district, like, then you don't want a centrist Democrat.
No.
Because the centrist Democrat is like trying to figure out how to give tax breaks to the people to build the hockey stadium.
And how to quote unquote work with everyone, but by everyone they mean the people that are donating to their campaign, which is not everyone.
You want a shit stir.
Yeah, exactly.
Is what you want. And clearly they did. They knew what they wanted.
Yeah, with that kind of margin, they were familiar with what they were looking for. But also, I think one thing that people maybe misunderstand, because a lot of these squad members get a lot of flack from conservative media and even centrist media for saying things, they have been really careful to do good constituent services in their districts, knowing that that's actually how you keep your seat. So that was one of the first things that AOC said when she took office. Is, you know, she was doing all those Q&As on Instagram or whatever, and people kept asking her, what's the first thing, you know, what's your main priority when you get there? And I think expecting her to say, like, we're going to pass the Green New Deal and get Medicare for all. And she said, the most important thing that I do is have good constituent services. And then everything else is important to serve my community. But like at the very basis of this experiment has to be good constituent services. And I think that's something that all of the members of the squad understand really well.
Yep.
And that, frankly, if you think about what your own member of Congress is doing, is often not the case. So, like, I would argue that, like, if you're wondering why, like, Jerry Nadler is skating into office, it's because his office actually does really good constituent services. So even though he is doing, I've always said that about him, even though he's doing Judiciary Committee chairing and whatever, like, the way that you win in your district is constituent services. And so oftentimes these centrist Democrats are serving some part of the community that they have ties to. But when you have a district like Rashida Tlaib's district, you are talking about a district that almost nobody has been serving.
Right.
And so,
well, and that's why Elliot Engel finally lost also.
Exactly. Right. It was because he was failing on the constituent services side. That comment he made was about him lacking the will to do constituent services. Mm-hmm. So, like, that is what is keeping these people in office, if you're wondering. And also why you want someone like her in office, even if you are Nancy Pelosi, to represent that district, because then it looks like the party is actually serving that district, whereas the party was not serving that district before.
No.
So in any case, other exciting news, and this was a slow rollout because no one was paying attention to this race at all.
No one knew that we were supposed to be watching for a progressive upset in Tennessee in the Senate race, in a statewide race.
Lamar Alexander's seat is open. Okay. So there's, there was a primary going on. Nobody was thinking about the Democratic primary because no one expects a Democrat to win that seat.
Right. And there was one guy who had raised $2.1 million and was like endorsed by the DSCC. So it was like,
he's like a veteran and he's like the guy,
That's the guy. Yeah.
Finished third. finished third behind Marquita Bradshaw, who won, who has cool glasses, and got 36% of the vote. She raised what, like $25,000?
Yeah. She just went door knocking.
Yeah. She's the first Black woman to be nominated for statewide office by any political party in Tennessee.
Yep. She's an environmental activist.
Or either major political party. I don't know what the Greens are doing in Tennessee.
Almost an all-volunteer campaign, which you would have to be.
Well, at $25,000, you don't. Exactly.
There's no salaries being given to anybody.
And it's this. So, and James Mackler, who was the sort of establishment pick, is the first DSCC-backed candidate to lose since 2010.
I know, it's been so crazy because, like, I think so many, and we've even said it on this podcast, like after Charles Booker didn't win, we were kind of like, it seems like the great white whale here for the left is probably like a statewide Senate seat. And we got one, and we just didn't even know we were supposed to be looking for it.
We didn't know we didn't know to pay attention to it. You guys, it's so exciting. Bradshaw is from Memphis.
Went to University of Memphis.
And she's an environmental activist.
Yeah.
So that's, I think, been one of the focuses of her campaign has been environmental equity. But then also, you know, she's been talking about healthcare, which everyone's talking about. She's been talking about the justice system, the usual left watch issues. But it was like this news that kind of slowly rolled out. And I saw it on the internet and I was like, this must be a state Senate seat because I can't imagine that we didn't know to look for this.
Right.
And then I guess I should have imagined that we didn't know to look for this because I think also a lot of the time there's like not good polling on races like this. So you just assume that the DSCC candidate's going to win.
Right,
and
the guy with the money.
The guy with the money is going to win. And also it's like a seat where no one pays attention to the Democratic candidate. But I actually think this is the best case scenario, even in Tennessee, for this race, because this brings attention to a race. Like, Democrats win when Democrats show up. We say that all the time. This brings attention to what seems like an unwinnable race in a way that makes it seem like a race to watch, even if it's not. And that only sets the stage for it in the future to be a winnable race. Like, you need people to know the race is happening in order for them to know that they could vote in it, in order for them to know that they could win it. There's like a few steps that need to happen. And when you have like a non-candidate person who's just like some rando you've never thought about before, who like you can't pick out of a lineup, the races seem intractable because you can't, you sort of catch that like the business as usual version of this race is that the Republican wins the seat. But this is not going to be the business as usual version of this race.
No.
This is going to be kind of an exciting race. And especially because only one of the candidates is going to have cool glasses.
Absolutely right. And I would also like to say, in talking about both she and Cori Bush, add both of them to the list of, people of color, people who are LGBTQ, not necessarily either of them, but I'm just talking about the people that have been running in the, I think the left has, especially sort of like Sanders supporters themselves, like have such a sort of like, whether it's Bernie bros or whether it's like coming from some sort of privileged white person space who sort of like, are just telling Black people what they should do on, for themselves. And there's always like some element of like the left being stuffy white people who are just sort of like trying to make decisions,
sort of condescending, who
are best for Black people when we should just stay out of, everyone's business basically. And like, this has been a constant both in 2016 and in 2018 and now in 2020 when you're looking at Jamal Bowman, you're looking at Mondaire Jones, you're looking at both of these two. It's always a woman of color or an LGBTQ person. Like, I mean, it's just like the coalition is bearing itself out in these primaries to be not what you have been telling us that it is.
Well, and I think we saw this immediately because when
of course, all you have to do is go to a rally, for God's sake. I mean,
also though, the political stars that first got rise out of the Sanders movement were not white men.
No.
It was like the Nina Turners of the world that first got rise, and then it was the AOCs of the world.
Right.
I think the sort of that characterization of the Sanders movement was intentional, and it came from the center, and it was part of just their own sort of like messaging strategy. And I get it because you message what you need to message, and you paint people however you need to paint them to make them lose, because that's what you're doing as someone who's trying to win. The fact that so many members of the group they were accusing the Sanders coalition of being a part of, this sort of like white elite, you know, upper middle class kind of, you know, condescending society, are the ones still making that accusation about the Sanders movement is often what's frustrated me.
And it's always been a broad coalition of working people. It's always been a broad coalition.
And of course, it
stripes.
Also includes pretentious white people, as so many things on the left have in all of history. But that is not who characterizes first of all, it's not who characterizes the movement, but also it's not who the movement has lifted up. So that, I think, that characterization is, I mean,
we've done a much better job of lifting those voices up because all the DSCC wants to do, or the D-Trip wants to do, is find some sort of white person who has been in the military.
Yeah, they just want white Army veterans.
That's what they're focused on.
It's like the Amy McGraths and the MJ Hagers and what was this guy James Macklers of the world.
Yeah.
That's all of their money goes to those people.
Yeah.
So in any case,
stop telling me what our coalition looks like, because our coalition looks like the people who have been winning races up and down the ticket. Exactly.
Also, Missouri voted to expand Medicaid.
Well, of course they did.
On August 4th. I mean, who doesn't want to expand Medicaid? You'd have to be an insane person not to want to expand Medicaid.
Yeah, they're just the latest conservative state of all of them to do so. You know, it's Idaho, it's Nebraska, it's Oklahoma. It's, you know, it doesn't matter. If it's on the ballot, it's going to pass.
Yeah, because the thing is that people love having Medicaid.
That's right.
That's the thing about it. In what was a kind of satisfying loss, Joe Arpaio tried to make his second comeback and did not succeed.
Couldn't get it done. That was close up until days later.
Had enough of him.
I know.
Yeah, I know.
Barely, though. Barely had enough of him.
I know. Well, it's not the greatest.
No. Like days later, he was only down by like 500 votes. And then the last batch came in and he ended up losing by like 6,000. But like, I kept looking at that and I was like,
what is going to happen?
What is happening?
Anyway, fat lot of good that pardon has done for him.
Yeah, I know. Because he's run twice now and it's not, and he just needs to, he's also old.
Yeah.
Just like go fishing. You know,
retire. There are so many people, I would contend most of Congress and the president, who just, why not enjoy a nice retirement?
Right?
I mean,
stop worrying about finding illegal immigrants and asking them for their papers. Like, you know, it's a lot of stress for an old person.
That's a lot of work. And it's work that frankly doesn't need to be done by anyone. So it's busy work. It's not even real work. So it's not, you're not performing heart surgery over there. You've created an unnecessary job for yourself, and then you're going around wasting all of your time doing it. That doesn't help anyone.
No, it doesn't.
So in any case,
consider
retirement. I mean, this is something that we tried to say to our own Senator Diane back when she ran a couple years ago, where we were just like, you know what's fun, and that we all are looking forward to, even as people in our 30s, is retiring.
I was going to say, I am 39 and I'm constantly thinking about whether I have enough money to stop working.
I'm ready to retire literally the moment I'm financially able to.
Right. Turns out that may never come.
My mom jokes that I retired 2 years ago because 2 years ago I stopped having a stable job and I've been loving it.
Right.
Loving it.
Yeah.
But so, retirement is what we're all working towards. Like, don't stay working until you're 90 when you could be retired.
Yeah.
In any case, so we mentioned the Chris Kobach loss in Kansas. We were kind of hoping he would win so that he would lose in November.
Right, because he just recently lost statewide because he was their candidate for governor who sort of gave us a Democratic
he's a
governor
guy who wants to lose. He wants to run to lose.
Yeah. And we really did want him to win, although you shouldn't have to sort of like bank on a bad candidate to win a Senate race.
And also, sometimes that doesn't work out for you.
Sometimes it doesn't.
Donald Trump being a perfect example.
Right, absolutely. So, Democrats have elected, or people in Kansas have elected Democrats statewide there before. I mean, this is not the first Democratic governor they've had.
And they've had a real bad run with Republicans.
Yeah,
between Brownback and all that shenanigans where they had to raise taxes. Republicans there had to raise taxes.
Well, it's because they ended all taxes.
Because they ended all the taxes, and it turned out you need some of them to do anything.
Yeah. It was kind of a bummer though, because like the Senate as a whole is now sort of like back in like toss-up land. But that shouldn't, if you see that type of headline, like you shouldn't necessarily be scared. The only reason that is the case is because there's now no one specific seat that seems like the one that the Democrats will absolutely get to take back the Senate, because we know that they have enough that it seems like they look like they're going to win, whether it's in, Arizona or North Carolina or wherever else. But now all of these other ones are sort of either toss-ups or lean in one direction. Yeah. So there's still a million places where Democrats only need to pick up basically one of these seats, whether it's, Iowa or wherever the hell else.
Right. And a lot of these are states that have elected Democratic senators before.
Yes.
So it looks like we're trending away from Republicans winning statewide office in the ways that they have been in for the last, few decades.
I have just been seeing like a lot of panic from people who like aren't necessarily following this super closely and don't know what the math is, like being panicked that we're now back into like Senate toss-up. And I would say you still need to do the work to make sure that, I have a good friend who has like, will post online, like, I was having a good day today, so I gave to Teresa Greenfield and that made me feel better. Like, maybe you're one of those types of people. Maybe you're a person who can drive to Arizona to knock on a door for Mark Kelly. Like, we shouldn't stop doing these things, obviously. But like, I would also
knock on doors.
But I would contend
socially distant.
Right. But don't also like, now throw up your hands and be like, oh, well, Chris Kobach lost, like the Senate is gone now, because like, that's not real.
No. And all of this, by the way, we don't have a good understanding of what the electorate looks like in November. We don't now because almost we're in an unpredictable cycle. Donald Trump could do or not do anything. Joe Biden could do or not do anything. Joe Biden could destroy his entire candidacy by saying one stupid thing. He will probably do that at least 3 times before we find out if it's going to destroy his candidacy. Yeah, but I mean, the thing, he might do that at a time where it destroys his candidacy, or he might just keep doing it and keep running as he's been doing. But the same thing could happen to Donald Trump. I mean, we actually don't know what's going to happen, because this is a really, we have foreign interference up the wazoo.
Oh yeah, on both sides.
On both sides.
Right. The election in November is basily, it's not Donald Trump versus Joe Biden. It's Russia versus China.
Yeah.
Right.
And so that's a disaster. And then we also, we have 2 people who can't be trusted to follow a script running at the same, running against each other at the top of the ticket. We have a very sort of controversial Senate that we're looking at with, some members that I think might be facing more pushback than they think, or some members that might find they have more support than they think. I mean, we just don't know. And in an open seat, we really don't know what's going to happen. Yeah. Because think about Tom Harkin's open seat and what happened there. I mean, open seats are an unpredictable thing in the Senate level.
They are.
So, just.
And there's 2 of those just in Arizona alone, or in Georgia alone.
In Georgia alone, yeah.
So, who knows?
Yeah, we don't know what's going to happen.
Just don't panic about us losing the Senate is what I'm saying.
Looking forward, we have one very important thing for you to do looking to the immediate future, which is that this Tuesday, Ilhan Omar's primary is happening. That's also in the sort of way that we were told that Rashida's Tlaib's, was going to be close. We're also hearing that's supposed to be close. Hopefully it won't be, but if you can do anything to help her in the next 48 hours and you feel so compelled, do that.
Do that. Yeah. Even if you can just give her $5 to, maybe stay on the air or do whatever.
That's one to keep your eye on. Yes. Because we also want her to come back.
Yes.
If for no other reason than that I feel like she has the most exciting family of the squad, because her daughter is real radical on Twitter.
Oh.
Her daughter's one of those teen activists who came out of the March for Our Lives movement.
Oh, sure.
Has been sort of hitting the scene, speaking things.
She should make friends with Kellyanne Conway's daughter.
I know. Ilhan Omar's daughter is better though than Kellyanne Conway's daughter.
I mean, she couldn't not be.
Right. But in any case, I recommend following her on Twitter, and also recommend reveling in how activisty a family they are.
Love it.
In any case. We still don't know who the running mate's going to be for Joe Biden, because we're never going to find out. We're supposed the second deadline that he's going to miss is tomorrow.
Yeah, and listen, I've got things to say about this, because I have been hearing from multiple people about how upset they are about how the last couple of weeks have gone down. And I get it, because it has gotten ugly. It has pitted some of these women seemingly against each other. It has pitted their, teams against each other. The media has not done a great job of this. There's just the LA Times as of today is getting a lot of flack because they compared this to contestants on The Bachelor with all of these women. It has felt gross. There have been a lot of oppo dumps in the last 2 weeks, But all of that has happened in the last 2 weeks. And the reason that that has happened in the last 2 weeks is because the Biden campaign doesn't have their fucking act together, and they have missed 2 self-imposed deadlines on this.
Yeah.
All of this action that has been insane has happened in the last 10 days, which are the 10 days after the day that we were supposed to know who this person was.
That's right. So if you're wondering why it's been hell for 10 days while we've had to hear horrible things about every female politician on earth,
yes,
that's because Joe Biden made up a deadline that he didn't follow through on, and then made up a second deadline
that he also didn't follow through on. Right, exactly.
And we're coming up to the third deadline, and I just don't feel optimistic. And also, I'm dreading it more. Like, the more information I get, the more I'm dreading the actual answer.
And it gives the appearance that they don't know the right thing to do. And I think a couple of the things that we're about to talk about here is because I think that we actually have proof of that. I mean, they would never admit that that's what's going on over there. And of course they wouldn't. But like, the fact that you are literally still flying people out to meet with you in Delaware as of like literally days ago, I think is a clear sign that maybe you haven't
feeling a little lost.
You're feeling a little lost.
Not the decisive leadership you're looking for. Well, we know one thing for sure. He really doesn't want to have to pick Kamala Harris.
It seems like not, right?
That was an easy answer. She's been vetted because she was already a presidential candidate.
Right. I mean, we vetted her and decided we didn't like her, but she has been vetted.
But I mean, we haven't picked, none of the people, we vetted him and decided we didn't like him either. I mean, like, she fits his brand.
Right.
So like, they don't care about what we decided, but there's not like a danger that like an oppo dump comes out against her that was like stuff we've never heard before. You know,
we've done that before already. We already know about all the stuff of her as a prosecutor. We know about the truancy things. We know about her early marijuana convictions. Like, we know all of that stuff. Yeah. We got it.
We know all the things. She was the obvious choice. They were setting it up as if she was going to be the choice. I mean, she was one of the first to endorse him. Certain promises had to have been made for her to come out and endorse him so early after having been the main shark, you know, in the debates against him. He made a bunch of specific announcements about what he was looking for that seemed tailor-made to fit her profile. You know, suddenly he was going to choose a woman, and then he was going to choose a black woman. And like, at a certain point it was like, okay, well, who's left that's like a credible contender in this field? There aren't that many black women who have served in high offices that are both politically aligned with Joe Biden enough to serve with him.
Right. It's certainly not as if there's not enough black women that are qualified or would do a good job. It's
which
just
we've covered pretty extensively.
Right. I was going to say, it's just that he has narrowed it down to like a certain genre of black woman.
And there aren't that many people in that genre.
There you go.
And so it seemed like the announcements were tailor-made for them to then announce that they were picking Kamala Harris. And yet
they haven't.
They cannot seem to pull the trigger. So I think
all because of womanizer Chris Dodd.
All because of womanizer Chris Dodd. No, I think also though, I think that speaks to Joe Biden's general sense of her as well. I think Chris Dodd would not have felt comfortable saying that if Joe Biden
is the type of person that I could see holding a grudge about that.
Please. Yeah.
Right. She made me look bad at a debate.
Right.
Oh, okay.
Right. For sure. Yeah. I don't think he has the thickest skin either.
Yeah.
So I feel like what we know for sure is that all of this shenaniganry is related to how much they don't want to pick Kamala Harris. And we didn't want to pick Kamala Harris either. So that wouldn't, on the face of it, bother me.
Right.
It's just that everyone else that they do want to pick is stupid.
Is worse, potentially. And, I mean, we talked last week about how I just wish that he would get it over with and pick her, just because, like, I know you don't want it to, you just want it to never happen, which I also understand.
I want him to never pick anyone, but not to promise he's going to pick. I want him to never announce it and also not promise he's going to announce it.
Right. Yes.
Just don't announce it. Just say nothing about it.
But we can tell you one thing that he should not do when he does announce it, and that is announce that that person is Susan Rice.
That's right. I think there's been a little bit of confusion about this because she is certainly someone who is articulate and compelling on television.
Yeah.
And so when you hear her talking about national security issues, you might feel compelled to feel calm because she is actually an expert. And she's also somebody that I know just through the kind of DC grapevine to be a kind of strong female presence in the national security space, which is rare and also, you know, something that is an admirable quality.
Right.
So you might feel compelled to think that because she seems so damn reasonable and smart on the television that you don't need to look any further into this. But we actually do have some experience vetting her because she was up for the job of Secretary of State when Hillary Clinton stepped down in 2012. That was when John Kerry ultimately got the job.
Yeah.
And so she was vetted at that time. And what we learned at that time were things that made us not pick her to be Secretary of State. And those things are things we should also let us, guide us to not picking her this time either.
What's interesting though is that she wasn't on a different side of any of these issues than Hillary Clinton, who was the person who preceded her at the job.
That's right.
So I'm not entirely sure why supporting every major US military intervention in the last 3 decades got her on the wrong side of being Secretary of State, because it didn't get Hillary Clinton on the wrong side of being Secretary of State.
The context in which that was happening, though, has to do with Benghazi. So what you think you're going to hear about with her a lot is Benghazi, and they think that's the downside with her, is that the reason she didn't get the job of Secretary of State was because the right got really pissed off because she went on television and suggested that the Benghazi attack was a spontaneous protest and not an organized assault by Al-Qaeda. And the right, which was trying to make that into a big deal as if there was like a war going on, couldn't have the future Secretary of State suggesting that. And also she was wrong, by the way.
And that was the thing. I mean, they basically accused them of having some like coordinated lying like on national television to change the narrative.
But anyway, for every reason that Hillary Clinton did not win in 2008, Susan Rice should not win this battle to be the vice president. No? She's like, look, she's just one of those general purpose DC national security people. She has supported U.S. militarism and imperialist foreign policy again and again. She, that community never gets taken to task for that, but it almost always is responsible for leading us into all of our worst foreign interventions, including the Iraq War, but also other sad, depressing things that we've gotten involved in that we never can extricate ourselves from.
Like think of any, you might not even know what they are, but like if you think to yourself, what are some of the terrible foreign policy things? Like words like Libya come up, words like Benghazi come up, words like Syria come up, Sudan. Like you don't even necessarily know what all of those are, but like if you're wondering what side of the issue Susan Rice was on.
It was on the war side.
On literally all of them, it was on the intervention side.
Yeah, she's an interventionist. And look, in 2008, that was something people were running on. In 2008, Hillary Clinton was trying to walk away from that to some extent, but that was her foreign policy was hawkish and we knew it, and that's why she didn't win. Then she became the Secretary of State, and we sort of accepted that that was going to be part of our foreign policy discussion. We are so far removed from anyone wanting interventionist foreign policy to be our guiding principle, especially on the left.
Well, and especially on the left, but also like interestingly, also in a lot of Republican circles too.
I was going to say, this is something that actually I think pits this wing of the Democratic Party, the sort of Iraq wing, if you will, of the Democratic Party, outside of the trend on both the left and the right. So there is like the only people that are still sort of into this interventionist policy are John Bolton and a bunch of DC technocrats who haven't like spoken to regular people recently. Yeah. I think that is her record is going to be offensive to the left. And so she's one of the choices that is not just like we're ambivalent on the left about, but is going to turn out to be problematic for the left. It's going to make it so that the left has no one to root for in this race. She was the Assistant Secretary of State for African Affairs under Bill Clinton. And in that role, she has a kind of long tradition of supporting and expressing fondness for a whole slate of dictators.
Sure.
There was sort of a new school of African dictators that came into power around that time in the 90s. And I think she was kind of the impression that this was like a new and exciting step in African governance, but it actually turned out to just be more people who became despots after a time and then turned out to be terrible anyway. She has had a remarkable lack of foresight in those situations. And she's also supported really violent interventionist policy in a lot of Africa in that role and since. And then, of course, we have this issue with Benghazi where the right really hates her for that reason. But also, there is the issue of her investments, which was the other reason that she didn't become Secretary of State, because she was invested in the fucking Keystone Pipeline, which is something that Joe Biden theoretically opposes right now. And like I said, he obviously doesn't.
I was going to say theoretically is the right word. This was something that came up in 2012 when she was, being vetted to be Secretary of State. But she also, she's very wealthy. Her personal wealth is estimated to be between $23.5 and $43.5 million. And her investments are in things like, large financial institutions, pharmaceuticals, casinos owned by Sheldon Adelson and Steve Wynn. She has problematic financial holdings in addition to being a noted warmonger. This is just like not someone that you don't want us to all have to rehash this
after she's already been chosen.
No.
But you also don't want the left to be faced with this choice.
Well, and that's the thing. And I think, you know, this is what I have been saying about her for a long time, and I have sort of only been talking about it in regards to Benghazi, but like, there's so much more there than that. There was an article this week in Politico that was like, Susan Rice is our #1 draft choice, which was like written by like some Republican folks. And like, look, I am not here to pick our vice presidential candidate on like what Republicans think is the best for them, because fuck them. Right. However, you know, we have talked extensively on this podcast about one of the things that is working in Joe Biden's favor is that like nothing about him is able to get Republicans riled up in a significant way where they can sort of like reach a level of like anti-partisanship hatred like that they had against Hillary Clinton. And I don't think Susan Rice probably gets them quite there because she's less of a known. I mean, Republicans have made lifetimes out of hating the Clintons. Right. So there's not that there. But like, I just don't know why you hand them this. It just doesn't make sense to me. And on top of that, her expertise is foreign policy, and that is supposedly Joe Biden's only expertise.
I was going to say, this doesn't get them any sort of it doesn't fill any of the gaps that they fill. None. Because right now, it is not foreign policy that is of major top of mind concern to most Americans. It's the fact that we don't have a functional healthcare system. Right. It's the fact that the world is falling apart and the economy is falling apart. It's the fact that millions of people are living in poverty and can't eat and are about to be evicted from their homes. I mean, you need someone with real domestic policy experience to add to this ticket, or you have not gained anything.
Right.
Yeah, that would be such a foolhardy choice. But these are people that make foolhardy choices. So, I mean, I'm not going to put it past them.
No, me either.
Especially now that we know that Gretchen Whitmer is back in the running.
You guys, we were supposed to have been done with her.
You guys,
where did she come from?
This is, once again, I feel like Joe Biden has been having a sort of rolling identity crisis where he doesn't know what voters are the voters he's there to get.
Right. Well, this was the thing that when I was talking earlier about how one of the stories that were coming up proves that he doesn't know what he's doing. The fact that Gretchen Whitmer was just at his freaking house on Sunday of last week is proof that he doesn't know. Because
he doesn't know.
The reporting last week, and I think we even talked about it on the podcast, was that the vetting was done. Right? Didn't we talk about that? Like the reporting was like, we're done with the information
and we
gathering.
were basically between Susan Rice and Kamala Harris.
And now we're just trying to like figure out the right decision. And now we've got a private jet from, carrying Gretchen Whitmer going to Delaware, being tracked last weekend. And it's like, no, get her out of there. Listen, if a white woman who is not named Elizabeth Warren becomes the vice president, I'm out.
Yeah. No,
I'm out. I will hope secretly that he wins, but like I can't do it. I'm not equipped.
His name
emotionally not equipped.
Be uttered by my lips. I will have to shut down to this race entirely.
I can't.
Yeah, I'm already borderline there, but like there is a world in which I feel enough excited about the VP pick that I only talk about them.
Right.
And we're not living in that world if Gretchen Whitmer is even in the room.
And this scares me on a couple levels. It scares me just on a base level that he doesn't know what he's doing with his vice presidential pick. But the only reason that you might think of calling her back into this race is if you think that there might be some sort of concern about your chances in the upper Midwest. And if
Joe Biden cannot get us fucking white voters in the upper Midwest, what are we doing here?
If you're calling Gretchen Whitmer in about trying to stir up votes in Michigan and Wisconsin, I would contend, she's not necessarily your answer, but I would also contend that that's a freaking problem.
This whole time though, I don't know who he thinks his base is.
Right.
He thought for a long time that it was black voters.
If it's not boring people from upper Midwest, then I don't know who the hell it is.
This is who he was brought onto the Obama ticket to get. I also have a new thing where I'm only referring to Delaware as the tax haven of Delaware. Because it occurred to me at a certain point that we can't trust Joe Biden to be better than he is, because he represents a state, and he's from a state that at its most basic core is like a non-entity tax haven. Like, that's who he represents, is a tax haven.
Yeah.
Or not what represented. But I mean, like, that in and of itself is a problem, because that means that the political environment that spawned him is like not a real place.
Yeah.
And like the financial interests that supported him are like not real people.
Right.
And like all of it is bullshit. So I'm only calling it the tax haven of Delaware.
Yeah, like I'm in.
Yeah, if you can point out another quality of Delaware that you think is more notable than, I mean, I know people live in Delaware. I know Wilmington is, like, I know there's stuff in Delaware, but like, if there is a quality that you can think of that is more notable than it being a tax haven, then I challenge you to share that with us.
Yeah.
You can't. Also, to add insult to injury to whatever the VP pick's going to be, it's going to be the worst person. The entire convention is going to be insulting no matter who you are. So
I can't with this convention.
This convention is a shit show.
I cannot with this convention.
First of all, the first night lineup makes you want to punch yourself in the face, just so you don't have to think about it any longer than you do.
Right. We have already gone on to a long diatribe about why John Kasich has no place in this convention. We don't really necessarily need to do it again. But we've newly been insulted by this because he's going to be on night one of the Unity Night with Bernie Sanders.
Like, fuck all the way off.
And Michelle Obama, which, like, sure.
Listen, I'll watch Michelle Obama speak on the same night as Bernie Sanders happily.
Right.
I don't need either of them to be tainted by the presence.
No. And you know what? And I had a thought about this. I think that this is, besides the fact that I don't want John Kasich there, but let's just assume that he is. If you want a Unity Night, who would you put on that night with Bernie Sanders that is going to be speaking on a different night of this convention?
Hillary Clinton.
It's fucking Hillary Clinton.
Like,
if you want a Unity Night, you put Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton back to back. It's not hard. So they're already just, besides the fact that it's wrong that John Kasich is there to begin with, throw him on a night with like some other like boring white bozo, like maybe John Kerry is speaking because he's, I don't know if he is, but I mean like, or even Bill Clinton. Like they're probably,
that's the night.
Probably chummy, right?
That's the night. That's the one.
And I also don't think Bill Clinton should be there either, because there's been a lot of people who have been like saying that he shouldn't be because of all of his Me Too problems. And I would contend that in the year 2020, that is probably right. He will give a good speech. I mean, he really probably was one of the main reasons that Barack Obama got reelected in 2016 because of that great speech that he gave at the convention on his behalf. So I get why you might want him there, but like, especially when you're pushing aside other voices, like it looks like AOC is not going to be speaking at this, who's the most famous person in your party. And I get that it's harder also because there's less speaking spots because they're only doing a few primetime hours. Usually at the convention, but you got people speaking all day, every day, and
why
you can just throw them whenever you want.
That a primetime spot somewhere belongs to a young person.
Right? Isn't he supposed to be the bridge to the next generation?
Why was Barack Obama able to be the president? It was because he was, as a young senator, given the opportunity to give a speech at the DNC before, so that everyone could find out who he was. He was, that's how you set the stage for the next generation, is that you give them speaking spots at these stupid conventions. Don't invite John Kasich to any night of your convention and not have a single person younger than Michelle Obama speaking.
Right. Yeah.
Michelle Obama does not belong to the generation that you need to get out to vote. I know everyone loves Michelle Obama, and that's fine.
Yeah, sure. And she should speak.
And she should speak, of course.
Yeah.
But Michelle Obama is not who reaches out to the voters you actually have to worry about not showing up for you.
Right.
That's why you invite a young person.
Yeah.
And you don't invite first of all, they don't have that many young people to choose from because they built no bench for themselves. So the only young people they can choose are upstarts like AOC. But I mean, like, pick the person who gets the eyeballs.
Yeah.
If you're trying to have a unity night of any sort.
Yeah. Also,
I would contend, I have my own scheduling plans for the convention, obviously, but like, I would say that first unity night is the night that you actually put AOC and not Bernie Sanders up to speak. I think she is actually the one who can marshal the votes on the left. Bernie Sanders knows who he like I said last week, or the week before maybe, we are chaos people. Bernie Sanders understands that about his coalition. He does his part. He says what he's supposed to say. He asks you to vote for not Donald Trump. But I think in his heart of hearts, he knows that his coalition is chaos people and he can't do much about us. And that is also something that AOC understands. But AOC can be a much more compelling unity force than Bernie Sanders because she is one of the chaos people. And she is also not 100 years old. So her involvement makes it seem like your movement has a future, which is what you're trying to project to people who are not excited to vote for you because they think that you killed their movement. Yeah. So I just like the unity night, like don't have John Kasich at it. Have Hillary Clinton be the voice of the far right.
Right. She'll do a fine job.
She'll do a fine job of that. But also don't like Bernie Sanders, of course, should get to speak, but he doesn't actually need to be the bridge to the left here. Like pick a better bridge.
Yeah.
And I think he would back me up on that. That's a bold statement.
No,
but I actually think he would back me up on that.
No, I think he might.
I think he knows who he's dealing with here, so I'm sure he's not actively backing anyone up on that at the moment. But like, I just like, this is a night of like old white people and Michelle Obama trying to tell us that we're all in it together. And it's like, you could have a night that is AOC, Michelle Obama, and Hillary Clinton, three powerful women who represent different sort of parts of the party and generations as well. Yep. Like that is a powerful but I've been trying to tell them to double down on women this whole time. I mean, I was trying to run an all-female ticket. So, you know, I think I understand how Joe Biden doesn't see it that way, but I'm also just like, somebody in there has to be like, we got to use brain science here.
Yeah. That's right.
Somebody.
Well, they're not doing it.
They're not doing that. No. In any case, no matter who you are, you're going to be annoyed. Because if you are on the far right, you're going to be annoyed that Bernie Sanders is speaking. If you're on the far left, you're not going to have time for Kasich or Clinton or the other Clinton or anyone. Certainly not for Joe Biden himself. Right. He's going to be probably speaking from his bunker. So you're going to.
Yeah, he's not. No, but nobody's going to Milwaukee.
Anyway. No one's going to Milwaukee.
Yeah.
It's a mess.
Trump might be giving it from the White House.
On the same night. Yeah, Trump might be doing it from the White House, which is probably illegal. Yeah. I mean, the whole thing is a shit show anyway.
Conventions, you guys.
I mean, they were a stupid idea to begin with, but they're not even, this is not even effective as an idea.
Yeah. Oh, man. Case,
Trump is also on an executive order kick this week.
Well,
he's been signing executive orders left, right, and center.
He kind of had to be.
Certainly no one else in government is doing anything, so I guess.
Right. Because, you know, this time last week when we were recording the podcast, we were telling you about how, you know, congressional leaders and Steve Mnuchin and Mark Meadows were meeting with each other. They're trying to get a deal done. And they continued to do so all week into Friday evening. And then everybody just went home and they were like, well, sorry.
We don't have a deal. Right.
Not going to do it. Yeah. So nobody has unemployment insurance. Everybody is about to be evicted from their homes. I saw an article right before we recorded this podcast that they estimate like 30% of people will not make their home payments next month, whether it's a rent or a mortgage. Yeah. So, cool, you know, it was just, you know, like just go home. It's like, they couldn't do it. So also, it was hard.
The good news is they're not going to have the manpower to forcibly evict all these people. So just stay put. Do not let them remove you from your home.
Right.
Just squat.
Yeah.
Squat. Everyone should just agree to squat from now on.
Yes.
And we should what we should do is we should see who they are forcibly evicting, and we should all show up in those places and just form human shields around whoever they're trying to forcibly evict.
Totally.
And then go back to squatting in our own homes.
Yeah. Anyway, from his golf club on Saturday, because of course that's where he was.
Well, he had to golf, Brent. He can't not, just because it's an emergency, he's not going to not golf.
Right. He announced that he was going to do, 4 executive orders that were going to extend unemployment, keep people in their homes, announced as if like he had really, payments, he had really solved it and he could do it all with these executive orders. And of course, everybody was sort of like, can you really do those things with executive orders? And now that we have seen the executive orders, we know that in fact, no, you can't. And actually, in some cases, he could have and didn't. So
in the cases where he could have, he chose not to. And in the cases where he couldn't have, he released unconstitutional executive orders, or signed unconstitutional executive orders.
That's it. That's what he did. Yeah.
So he's decided that we're going to expand unemployment insurance $400 a week instead of $600 so that people can quote unquote make their rent. But I don't think he understands that no one was even making their rent on the $600 a week. So 400 is like a real stretch. Yeah. And also the federal government's only paying 300 of that 400, and the states are somehow coming up with the extra 100, which is a mystery that no one has yet gotten into. So
Anyway, the details are definitely not as generous as he made them sound when he announced all 4 of them.
Yeah.
So we'll go through them one by one, and we'll tell you what they actually are, so you can then be depressed about the state that we're in, since we don't have a deal in Congress. The first one is this one is the darkest one, because he said the quiet part out loud here with this one.
Yeah. Well,
because
he's the guy who does that sometimes.
He's the guy who does that sometimes, exactly, yeah. Because he has instructed the US Treasury to halt collection of payroll taxes starting September 1st through December 31st for workers who earn less than $4,000 a week, which is essentially $104,000 a year if you're a salaried person. So now that will feel for a few weeks from September through December as if you got a little bit larger of a paycheck because those taxes were not collected, but it is only a deferral of those taxes. So they will be due later.
Cool.
So you're just
now you're in debt to the US government.
So now you're in debt to the US government. But the quiet part that he said out loud is that he has called on Congress and future presidents, including Joe Biden, so he must think that he's going to lose, is that he wants them to make that deferral or he wants to make the deferral actually a permanent tax cut, which might cause you to think to yourself, hey, wait a minute, don't those payroll taxes pay for Social Security and Medicare? And you are right about that, because that is what they pay for.
That's right.
That's exactly what they pay
for. If there was one kind of tax cut you shouldn't wish upon yourself or anyone else, it is payroll taxes that pay for the social programs that keep the fabric of society from self-combusting.
He literally just admitted that this was an attempt
trying to eliminate Social Security.
Eliminate Social Security, not just reduce it. Like this is an elimination of you like paying into your Social Security.
Also, there is a way to reduce those taxes, and that is to eliminate the cap. So if you are someone who is thinking, yeah, we should have fewer Social Security related taxes, and my SSI taxes are too high, that's fair. Those are the biggest chunk that come out of your paycheck.
Right.
The way that you reduce those is to ask everyone to pay them on their entire income.
Because currently nobody who's making more than like a couple $100,000 is paying red cent.
Exactly. So after the cap, people pay just like a sort of an amount only on the first, what is it, $104,000,
yeah,
$250,000? The cap is low.
Yeah, it's low.
The first $104,000 or something like that. You don't pay any additional tax on any income you earn above that. So if you earned $30 billion last week,
you only paid payroll tax on $100 and some thousand.
Yeah. So there is a way to lower those taxes on the vast majority of people, and it's to make Jeff Bezos pay them.
Correct.
And instead of doing that, what we're doing.
By the way, Bernie Sanders released a bill to do so today.
Because Bernie Sanders has been talking about this issue for decades, and is not sorry. Or I don't know why I said he's not sorry. Why would he? Of course he's not sorry. None of us are sorry. But this is like one of the biggest scams going in the tax game right now. Is Republicans are constantly trying to convince you, and even some Democrats, including Joe Biden, are trying to convince you that we are running Social Security is running out of money. We don't have any money. We can't have Medicare, and we can't afford Medicaid for all. We can't afford Medicare. We're gonna have to cut Social Security. Social Security is something you pay into so that you later can benefit from it. So you do want to keep that one, but also rich people are not paying into it what you're paying into it.
That's right.
So like there is a way to lower those taxes in a way where the people who need that cut could have a tax cut. And we are electing to do the opposite, which is force them to live in poverty as old people.
Yeah.
So that's just an aside. The $400 extension on unemployment, I think I talked you through.
You sort of hit.
I didn't hit the part where the funding that he's marshaling for it is money that's going to run out long before December 6th, which is when it expires.
Well, right. Well, as we give you all of the details of this, at the front of your mind, you should remember that currently 30 million people are getting unemployment aid right now.
That's right.
So think about that. But as you mentioned, yes, this is for $400. It's going to restart it at $400 a week. Federal government is paying $300 a week, and the states are going to have to pay $100 a week.
With mystery money that they don't have.
Right. Because I almost said hilarious. Nothing about this is hilarious. It's all tragic. It's funny because it's sad.
Ironic about what's frustrating about this
is the thing that became the sticking point as Congress was trying to come up with a deal here was the money that the Democrats wanted to include for state and local governments, which the Republicans did not want to give. So the Republicans are now asking states to kick in an additional $100 a week per person who is on unemployment, but they're also not willing to give them one more dime in a deal that's coming through Congress.
And we're talking about states that have almost no economic activity happening in them.
Well, right, exactly. They're all broke.
where's all the money coming from?
Exactly. So states far and wide, Republican and Democratic led, are all like, with what money, sir?
Yeah. Well, the money that he claims he's going to use to do this on the federal side is DHS money from a disaster relief fund that he's going to take $44 billion from, that's normally for like natural disaster relief.
Right.
They're going to shift it to unemployment. It's going to run out. The plan runs out either on December 6th or when the $44 billion runs out. That's going to run out. The $44 billion is going to be gone immediately.
In October. Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to cover less than 5 weeks.
Right. If the 30 million people stay unemployed, which
I would contend more people will likely be unemployed at the end of those 5 weeks. And also there might be a second thought you're having, which is, hey, I thought that Congress is in charge of appropriations and that the president can't unilaterally appropriate money to any random policy area that he wants. And that is also true. There's almost no disagreement about the fact that this is also not constitutional.
Right.
Because
Republicans and Democrats far and wide are both like, well, you can't be doing this.
Congress has the purse strings, you guys. The one thing we have to protect us from an executive branch that has gone off the rails.
Yeah.
That they can't actually appropriate any money at the executive level. That is not like they don't have that power. All appropriations start in Congress. So like they can go to Congress and say, hey, we should appropriate money for this. And Congress can be like, well, write a bill. Yep. But if you have watched any Schoolhouse Rock, one thing that you should know for sure is that the president doesn't have the power to appropriate funds.
Right.
So Donald Trump can't just decide we're going to increase unemployment benefits unilaterally.
No.
As much as we would like someone to decide to do it at some point, that is going to have to be Congress. And so that's going to end up in the courts, and who knows what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And then there's the eviction moratorium.
Right. And this is the one that we mentioned that he could have actually done something about and then chose not to. Because while he's calling this an eviction moratorium, it is not even close to being an eviction moratorium.
It's a plan to make a plan, which the U.S. government is fond of doing. It's a classic government plan.
Right. But this is one that he actually could have done something on, because the U.S. government, whether through Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac or whoever these, mortgage lenders are, owns most of or at least a vast majority of mortgages in the country. So you could actually, as the holders of these mortgages, say, hey, we're halting mortgage payments. And hey, because we're halting mortgage payments, people who are landlords don't have to, or, owners of these rental agreements also sort of like don't have to, so they're not out any of the money. That's the other thing too. Like obviously like our first priority is the renters here because we don't want homelessness, but like there is like a level of, you
have to provide relief to their landlords
with
too.
What money are the landlords supposed to be paying their mortgages that they owe?
Exactly.
And the people who could actually deal with that is the federal government. And so like, this is one where he actually could have been like, no, we're suspending mortgage payments, which means homeowners don't have to, get rental payments to pay their mortgages. And so we're not kicking anybody out of our homes. They could have done this one. Yeah.
Well, and that's one thing that's been frustrating about the way the eviction moratoriums have been working is that they haven't provided any sort of mortgage relief to anyone. And so there is still incentive for landlords to kick out tenants who, by the way, are expected to pay back the back rent that they didn't pay.
I want to talk about that after we recap all of these. Right. Yeah.
Where
I mean, we can talk about it now, but.
No, we're going to talk about it in a second. I was just like, but then on top of that, like they're not going to, like, of course they need you to pay your rent because they are not being given any relief from their mortgages.
Of course.
So like, this is a ripple effect that also, like, I know we hate landlords because.
Right, we do.
Because I'm a renter and who doesn't hate their landlord? However, I would like my landlord to not be in a position where they have to get rent from me if I'm a person who can't afford to pay my rent.
Well, that's the thing. And not every
no, someone's going under in the circumstance. Like it is still up to people who can't afford to maintain their payments to make them, if we don't have a system in which it's the banks that aren't taking the payments. And it's, like if we don't have a policy where we've halted the payments on some level, someone has to pay.
Yeah, exactly.
And if there's no money with them to pay, with which to pay, and it doesn't benefit the economy either if everyone loses their savings.
No, it sure doesn't, which people are already doing.
Exactly. So, I don't know.
The final memo is not even the waiving of student loan payments. You probably heard that he was going to end student loan payments for a while. He's ending the payments on the interest. Right, exactly. And only through the end of the year, at which point you will still be required to both pay that back. And then also on January 1, your gonna just be back to your normal payments, as if we're gonna be fine in January. Like you're
January
gonna have
1st
a
is
job
when
and like
all this goes away on January 1st.
Yeah. And again, this was one of the ones, because the federal government owned so many of the student loans, they could have also either just canceled the interest for these months, or they could have canceled the actual payments for these months. They could have done more here as well and just chose not to.
Well, they don't want to.
Yeah.
This is not who they're interested in providing relief to.
Right. And all of these things, and you just hinted at it, and we've kind of hinted at it in places as we talked about all 4 of these executive orders, that is important to think about. And this is something that the left has often said here. It's the reason why we also sort of favor universal healthcare. But so many of these things don't just need to be pushed. They don't need to be deferred. They need to be canceled. Now, not necessarily the payroll tax, because that is something, as for the reasons that we mentioned, I mean, for people making less than $100,000, they could be canceled, at least until December anyway. There's no reason to make people repay the payroll taxes.
Don't make people repay
you know what
back
I mean?
costs.
Right, exactly.
That's
but
crazy.
There is no reason why the federal government right now should not be saying, we are canceling rent and mortgage payments. We are canceling student loan. They should cancel that indefinitely, is what they should do. Because they have the ability to do so. And I think that we're finally starting to learn that they have the ability to do so. I think like 6 months ago, people weren't really able to wrap their head around this. And that is in large part due to Democrats not explaining that
not messaging
also,
it.
and not messaging it, and also claiming that we couldn't do it. I mean, we spent an entire primary listening to Joe Biden say why we couldn't do things like this. But we can, and we should, because this is a financial crisis that we are going to be in for some time now. And like making people pay, like with what money are people, even if they get a job, even if they become employed tomorrow after having been unemployed since March, with what money are they going to pay 6 months of back rent and 6 months of back payroll taxes and 6 months of back student loans? They can't. And people aren't going to have all of this. Just because you get a job doesn't mean you all have like some sort of like windfall of money, especially when you weren't making a living wage in the first place.
I was going to say, it's not like anyone's making any money at the jobs that they're currently doing.
Right.
I mean, that's why we had to be so concerned that the unemployment benefits paid better than a lot of jobs.
Yeah. So the
unemployment benefits didn't pay that well, you guys. It was the jobs that didn't pay well.
Right. Exactly. So you have to cancel all of this stuff.
Yeah.
It's not a deferment situation.
So what is the point? I mean, I bring this up every week, but I'm going to say it again. What's the point of living in a society if we can't invest in people this way? Why do we pay taxes if we can't, if they just are going to go to like random foreign incursions that Susan Rice and Hillary Clinton are supporting and are not going to go to addressing the needs of regular people in a moment like this, where, you know, it doesn't benefit like society because it creates instability if everyone loses their savings at once. That's what the Great Depression teaches us. You know, you don't want everyone to lose their savings all at once. And that is what's happening here. And it is only going to be compounded by having to owe back rent and back, you know, taxes and back interest on all of the expenses that you couldn't afford to pay because a thing beyond your control caused you to lose your job. The point of having a society is that we figure out how to get everyone through something like this without bloodshed. Like that's what society is for. That's why we pay taxes, is so that we have a backup. That's what Social Security is at the large scale. Social Security is a way for us to make sure that people, when they enter a phase of their lives where they can't contribute to the economy in the way that they used to, that they can be cared for
themselves. Right.
And that is what we need to do to everyone, for everyone right now, is we need to provide a way for them to be cared for, because that is the point of having a government and a society. That's part of keeping us safe. That's their responsibility. So the sort of idea that this is like not feasible or that people aren't owed this blows my mind all the time, because there is no reason to continue to contribute to a society. And what you find once people's lives, you know, once something unpredictable wipes out people's savings and wipes out people's stability, is they stop wanting to be productive members of society because there's nothing in it for them. And that is how you end up with a society where no one has any investment in, you know, creating a safe, stable environment. That is how, I mean, if you wonder why high poverty areas become high crime areas, it is because they're nothing about this. The social contract has been broken with people living in high poverty areas. And so because of that, they have nothing to gain from playing by our rules. And that is the same thing that's going to happen to everyone here, because once we break the social contract with every single person in America, except for Jeff Bezos, then what we have is a society of 300 million people who have no incentive to operate as if, you know, for anyone other than themselves.
Yep.
Like there's no reason to play by any of the rules. There's no reason to pay your back rent in a society where trust has been broken to this extent. There is no reason to, I mean, how are they're gonna evict every 30,000 people with what manpower? You know, like the way in which people react when the crisis becomes this big is what it was like in the 80s in the East Village when I lived there. It's everyone squatting. There's a thieves market that happens outside of your house where you buy shit on the street from people that stole it from people uptown. And, you know, you sort of live in a world where you know that like weird crimes are going to just happen around you because the social contract's been broken with everyone around you. So no one knows what's going to happen. It's all very unpredictable. And like, that doesn't need to happen here.
No.
We have money here. We have resources. This is a country with money and resources. We're the richest country in the history of the world. Right. There's no reason for us to be at risk of any of this. There's no reason for one single child to be hungry in this country. And of course, by the way, these are programs that are going to disproportionately affect people of color. They're going to disproportionately affect poor people, and I think something that maybe like a lot of voters don't think about often because it's not something that is discussed very often is that as much as like our public policies have been racist for a long time and have been specifically designed to discriminate against people of color, a vast majority of poor people are white. So we're not talking about policy that like, if you are someone who is comfortable with racist policy, you still should not be comfortable with this. This is a country where numerically most poor people are white. Most poor people look like you and should have had the same opportunities as you, a random white person who doesn't seem to care about anything, and don't. And so this is actually bad for everyone. It's not something where you can just say, oh, well, it's going to affect Black and brown communities, but it's not going to affect me. It is going to affect everyone. So yeah. Also, you shouldn't say that anyway. Well, I mean, obviously, but I mean, just no, like, I know, but like these people who, the people who do, there are a lot of people who are just sort of like this is not a problem for me. When I think about this a lot, and like in places where the code word would be like it's going to affect urban areas, or you know, like a lot of the time it's coded, but what they're really saying is like, well, this affects cities, this affects Black and brown people, so this has nothing to do with us here in this small town America where everything's idyllic, and like it does because you have poverty there. Yeah, exactly. Yep. Yep. One other hilarious executive order that we might be getting here, we haven't got it yet, but it's being teased here, is one that certainly doesn't need to be done. This was a waste of a signature. I mean, would be a waste of a signature because they haven't done it yet. Right. Because, well, they don't believe in this anyway. But Donald Trump has been for a while trying to think of what he can do to make it look like he's doing something on healthcare. Right. Because no one has a good plan for healthcare. We talked about this a while ago, that he was like teasing some sort of executive order on healthcare, and he actually said it was coming in the next 2 weeks, and those 2 weeks have passed. So everybody's like, oh, he's just kidding again, because he's been kidding about healthcare for ages. And so we finally now find out that he's going to be doing an executive order to force insurance companies to cover you if you have a pre-existing condition. I know of another person who passed a similar policy 1 decade ago. 1 decade ago, and that is currently still in effect. Right. Yeah. That would be Mr. Barack Obama. Barack Obama. Yeah, that's an Obamacare. Basically, what Trump already wants the law, you guys. Right. It goes back to that old thing that when people were sort of like trying to there were a bunch of memes, I feel like, when they were trying to get rid of this in Congress, that like they were gonna get rid of Obama, or they were going to get rid of Obamacare and then replace it with the Affordable Care Act. Right. You know? Yeah, that's kind of, he even tweeted, I will always protect your pre-existing conditions. The Dems will not, which is funny because they were the ones who gave us the pre-existing conditions in the first protection. Right, that is currently the law of the land, which is the reason that we don't need an executive order. Right. Yeah, this is a waste of an executive order, if nothing else. It's also a very confusing, I mean, like, this is a really brazen attempt to rebrand an existing policy that your own party's been fighting against for over a decade. Well, that's the thing. I mean, he tried to get rid of this law in Congress, which failed. He's currently trying to get rid of it in the courts. Yeah. You can't then decide that you have created it. No, you can't. I mean, he's been taking credit for a lot of things he didn't do, because we have another story coming up about him taking credit for a policy that he what's funny is that he has already said what's funny is that he has already said
before that he's the person who has saved pre-existing
Right.
conditions in your healthcare.
Yeah.
Like he said this in January. He was like, you have this unpopular and unfair individual mandate, but like, I agree with like saving pre-existing conditions. And then he said, I will always protect your pre-existing conditions. Yeah. It's like, so did you already do it in January? Because if so, then you shouldn't need an executive order now. And also, what do you think that you did in January? Because we've already had this for 10 years. Yeah, I mean, it's like, it's one of those things where it's just a whole like rabbit hole of what is it that you're talking about that I don't really want to go down, but it's hilarious.
He's not talking about anything. You don't need to go down it. There's nothing to talk about. Right. The rabbit hole is just gobbledygook. There's nothing real. And then you might have also heard that on Thursday, Trump decided he was banning TikTok. And I've been trying to figure out what that means because I immediately checked my phone and TikTok was operating as usual. And I hadn't really read the story. I was just
thank God too, because that fills at least 2 hours of my day.
You guys, quarantine is boring enough without us losing TikTok. But in any case, so it turns out, so he was going to ban TikTok in 45 days, as if we're China and we need we need censored internet. TikTok is actually suing the administration. They're going to file their lawsuit on Tuesday because they are arguing that this action, they didn't give the company a chance to respond to their concerns in any way. They just decided that they were going to ban it without having to clarify their justification. And so here's what would happen if the ban actually does go into effect. The app wouldn't just like disappear off your phone, but it wouldn't be able to send software updates. They would have to take it out of the Apple Store and the Google Store.
So download it now.
U.S. advertisers wouldn't be able to use it. The 1,000 employees who work for TikTok in the U.S. could have their paychecks indefinitely frozen. Yeah. It could force the landlords that house their offices to evict them. It could make it impossible for American lawyers to represent them in U.S. legal proceedings. And this is all without any sort of due process on the front end. So I think this kind of action, just because of its unilateral nature, should actually worry the entire business community. I know the Senate has already banned TikTok on their own devices. Like there are plenty of old people in Congress who are
and I think other corporations have also done so.
And,
I think like either Apple
people are worried about its ties to the Communist Party in China. And like, look, work that out. Sure. That we don't want the Chinese Communist Party capturing all of our data. I get that.
But you know what? What the Communist Party could do if there isn't TikTok is they could get our data from someplace else.
I was going to say, like,
I mean, like, I know that is not like the opinion that I am supposed to have, but like, I am living in the world assuming that my data is probably already owned by both China and Russia.
Yeah.
And various other, like, look, here we are. I'm watching TikTok and I'm sending text messages to people. Like, I mean, have at it, I guess. Like, and I know that's wrong. I get it. Sure. But also, it's one of those things where it's like, I think that very few people are functioning in the world thinking that their data is safe. And while that is upsetting and should not be the case, and we should be able to have our data safe, the perception, I think, by most people, I don't have stats to back this up.
This is us just talking out of our ass, so don't worry about it.
My guess is that most people assume that like what they are doing on the internet is probably less private than they would think that it is.
Also, I would contend that of the people that do think that, the demographic that uses TikTok is in 100% agreement that that's the case.
Yes.
Like I think there is still this sense among older people that they could protect data.
Yeah.
Whereas I think most young people operate like we know all of our data is everywhere.
Yeah,
no, it's an admirable goal. But we all kind of operate in a world where everything we do is online. But it's like how like my parents were very suspicious of online banking when it started.
Totally.
I was like, I do all my banking online. I haven't written a check in years. Yeah. And they were like, well, we can't just let them keep track of our money. And I was like, we shouldn't, but here we are, Right. I think the thing that bothers me about this is that the reason that there was no kind of like process, like appropriate process that this went through, because there have been other companies that the US government has had to censure in this way, but they have always first gone to the company and then gotten feedback and then tried to work it out first. And that didn't happen here. But also, this is just because Trump is angry because a bunch of teens trolled him on TikTok.
Well, that event, yeah.
And you know what? They can troll him on Twitter too.
Yeah, that's not going to end.
And he's not going to ban Twitter because he loves Twitter.
Instagram already has like their own version of like whatever TikTok is at this point that they're like testing out right now.
Well,
so it's
and
like
TikTok was just what Vine and Snapchat were before. It's all the same app.
Yeah.
They control you on any app. The teens will find an app. It's an app. It'll be an app you've never heard of, because it almost always is. And you will not know how to find that app. You will never have heard a mention of it. And every teen in your life will be on it 24 hours a day. And they will use that to troll you. There's no winning with teens. They always know about an app you don't know about. So this doesn't solve the problem Trump has with TikTok.
No.
And so it's just petty, which is him.
Yeah.
But also apparently Microsoft has been in early talks to buy TikTok.
Yeah.
And so I think this might just be an attempt to like squeeze that so that they get through those talks more quickly.
Well, and it wouldn't surprise me at all if, my guess is that he is threatening to ban TikTok, but doesn't really actually want to, because I think he knows that the rage will be so high. It wouldn't surprise me at all if he has knowledge about this Microsoft deal,
I think
that makes it seem like it is safe for him to threaten this ban, knowing that this Microsoft deal is probably going to go through within the next 45 days. That's just my guess.
Yeah, I feel like, I mean, I don't know. This does feel like a concerning precedent for any company that has any foreign ownership, which is all companies, because we don't know shit here, that is using, I mean, like this, every company that you can think of has some piece of their operation happening abroad.
Yeah.
Aside from the people that make mugs for presidential campaigns,
Yeah.
there is like no one who is like exclusively operating in the US.
I was going to say, where do you think we're getting all our phones from?
Exactly. So like, this is like
the phone that you have TikTok on.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, right. Like at a certain point, like we've already had several scares about parts for Apple computers and phones being held up because of, blockades on the, against China or whatever. Like that already panicked everyone enough.
Right.
Now, ephemeral things like TikTok also, I mean, this is really not how you get people behind you.
No.
In any case, he's also considering maybe thinking of a vote by mail executive order. So we'll see what comes of that. Keep your eye on it because it'll be terrible, but he's the worst.
Insane.
But as I teased earlier, he has been taking credit for another piece of policy for years now. And he walked out of his own press conference on Saturday because a reporter fact-checked him on it. And CNN got real excited about it because it was one of their reporters. So
I thought it was a CBS reporter.
Oh, was it a CBS reporter? I thought it was
know.
a CNN reporter. Well, whatever.
Maybe they've all finally banded together.
The media got very excited about this one.
Yeah, you might be right. I'm not sure.
Because so it was, it was at one of his golf clubs, of course. But he keeps saying that he is the one who got the Veterans Choice Program passed, which is a program where like veterans can see doctors outside of the VA system.
Yeah.
And what is, I think, most interesting about this is not that it was actually signed into law by Barack Obama in 2014 and therefore predates him by years and also has nothing to do with him, but is also that it is actually the brainchild of John McCain and Bernie Sanders.
Right. But wait a minute, Lila. Bernie Sanders never worked in a bipartisan fashion to get anything passed in the Senate,
and he's never passed any bills, as we know from Oppo messaging on the Democratic side.
Well, this story must be wrong.
That's right. That's right. If we know anything from the Democrats' own
Bernie
mouths,
Sanders has spent the last 30 years doing nothing in the Senate.
Not a thing. He's never passed a single bill. He just sits and grumbles. He's a grumbler.
Oh, man. Anyway, carry on. That's not the point of the story.
Yeah. So in 2018, Trump signed the VA Mission Act, which slightly modified the program and expanded its criteria, its eligibility criteria. But Trump over and over keeps claiming that he created the Veterans Choice Program. And so finally, it was a CBS News correspondent. You're right. It's hard with all the same acronym. And so Paula Reed asked him on Saturday, why do you keep saying you passed Veterans Choice? And then kept at it because obviously it's wrong because Obama passed it, first of all, but also John McCain and Bernie Sanders passed it. Yeah. And Trump just like abruptly said, okay, thanks very much. And then YMCA started playing and he walked away.
Well, listen, I have to say,
he himself doesn't know why.
Perhaps maybe the media is feeling a little bit emboldened about asking a freaking follow-up question after they watch that Axios interview, which we do not have a full story about here, but you should watch all 40-some minutes of it because it is a true delight. But I think what we learned from that interview is that he does not respond well to you asking a second question about something.
Really, even a first question. He responds well to you listening to him pontificate off the top of his head.
Yes.
But he doesn't want to be asked
So
He
for all
certainly doesn't want to
you,
be fact checked on what he's saying.
right.
Which
So
is
for all you journalists out there, by the way,
right. The way to get to him.
learn a lesson here.
Follow-up question.
We should have been doing that for the last 4 years.
I mean, that's really the whole job of a journalist.
Yeah.
It's wild.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, the school opening controversy continues. We have seen some schools. I'm always shocked. School opening is something that I think everyone thinks in their head happens at the same time in every school district in America,
No,
but in fact happens at wildly different times of year depending on where you live.
Some schools are already suspending students for taking photos of people without masks walking around the hallways.
Right. So it is August 9th, and some schools have been back for 2 weeks.
Right.
The schools in New York City start after Labor Day.
Yeah.
And the Thursday after Labor Day. So it's after the Labor Day that Labor celebrates, which is different for some reason than Labor Day itself. It's also chaos. But so the New York City schools are still discussing whether or not they're going to go back. And Cuomo gave them a kind of green light to at least think they might be going back, which caused a huge controversy because almost all the major school systems in the country have decided not to go back. Like Chicago's not going back, LA's not going back. But obviously Cuomo hates de Blasio.
September, right? Isn't that what he said?
Yeah, it's September. Yeah. Well, the schools in New York go back usually around September 8th-ish, like somewhere in there. So it's like the first or second week of September that they go back. Yeah. And Cuomo and de Blasio hate each other. So they're looking for ways to get each other. And so Cuomo released, what the requirements will be to reopen the schools. And then de Blasio gave them a report about how it plans to reopen the schools. And then the Cuomo people were like, this is stupid. And I would contend that both of them are being stupid because obviously New York City's public schools should not go back. And they should instead find alternate ways to make sure childcare is available to people and people have access to remote learning tools so that they can continue to be educated, but not die.
Yeah.
So they said that they're not going to reopen the schools unless the daily infection rate is below 3%. I think it's at around 1% now. But also they're going to send students who don't wear masks home, which is like, good luck enforcing that. And people are not going, there's going to be a tracing team just for the schools. But given how many people you would have to interact with just to get to school in New York City, I feel like contact tracing is an impossibility once you have kids just like wandering around the city on the subway. The teachers union might still derail those plans because they are not happy about this. But here's something I didn't know that I should have known, because this is one of the most basic things I should have known about life. It is not legal for teachers and other public employees in New York City to strike and they face a penalty of 2 days pay for every 1 day on strike, under the Taylor law. There is an anti-union law on the books in New York City that is preventing the teachers from being able to strike in response to unsafe working conditions in a pandemic.
Oh my God.
Oh my God.
That's
so there
crazy.
are a few caucuses inside the UFT, which is the teachers union in New York, that are looking for ways to deal with this. So like they're threatening sick outs at one of them. Some of them want to start a task force. They hate Carranza, the chancellor, and everyone does. So he should resign and everyone agrees. But I wouldn't trust any of the fools in charge of the New York City public schools right now to be doing anything responsible at any level of government. And that starts with Cuomo and goes all the way down to Carranza. But so this continues to be a shit show is the point. And nobody knows what's going to happen. And also any of this could be derailed at any moment by one child with COVID who gives it to 100 other children.
Of course.
Just by showing up at school. And like, I mean, there is.
And that will happen. We know that will happen.
Of course that will happen. And I think in New York City in particular, there is not the kind of outdoor space that allows for outdoor instruction. Like people have been talking about how maybe we should do outdoor instruction. And like, you could do that for a while weather-wise, but New York City is not a place where there's a lot of public space available for that kind of thing. So I really don't understand what they think they're going to, how they think that would work. I mean, are they going to make every kid in the city come to Central Park every day? And then when they get there, what are they going to do? They have 1 million students in that school system, I'm pretty sure. Like, what are they going to do with them then? Like, this is going to be a mess. Speaking of a mess, Mike DeWine, the governor of Ohio, tested positive for COVID. And he was one of the few Republicans that was actually taking it seriously. Yeah. But then he also tested negative the same day. Like he got tested twice that day and the results were different. So like, he has it, but also.
Oh, he does? Oh, I thought he didn't.
I think that if you get a positive test, like you're more likely to get a false negative than a false positive. So I think he definitely has it. I mean, look, I haven't read that much about it, but I think if you have a positive test, they presume that you have it, and the negative test is the false negative.
Interesting.
So
all right,
add him to the list, but also what a mess.
I know. Yeah, he's like one of the Republican. He was like one of the first Republicans to actually do anything. I think he was the first. I think what he did was actually stop the school year.
Yeah, he was the first to shut down schools.
He was the first to shut down schools. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. And then in final news, the poor, bedraggled Libertarian Party. Oftentimes, Vermin Supreme is hanging out there, and you have to deal with the embarrassment of having a man who's wearing a rain boot on his head be one of the faces of your party. And that is like, that means that someone,
or sometimes it's an even more embarrassing person like Gary Johnson.
Yeah, I was going to say that means that someone incredibly boring like Gary Johnson has to share a stage with Vermin Supreme. This year, Joe Jorgensen is their candidate.
Yeah.
And she got bit by a rabid bat and was therefore unable to attend their a campaign rally on Saturday in Jackson.
Yeah.
So, look, that's about what you'd expect.
Yeah. I know.
But also, first of all, don't be holding an in-person campaign event. And second of all,
come on.
How'd she get bitten by a rabid bat? Where was she?
I don't know.
Don't
they assume that all bats are rabid too?
Yeah, I think so. I think you get the rabies vaccine no matter what. So maybe it wasn't a rabid bat, it was just a healthy bat.
But either way.
Once you're being bitten by a bat, you're sort of in a weird situation no matter what. Oh man.
What
a shame.
Sure. Why not?
Meanwhile, I've reached the stage of quarantine where now if I find a washable tattoo in my house anywhere in a drawer, I just put it on. So if you've been noticing that I have on, if you're watching us on YouTube and you notice I have a weird tattoo on my arm, it's because I now wear, removable. What are they called?
Yeah.
Semi-permanent tattoo. I don't know. It's not a real tattoo. I haven't gotten a tattoo during quarantine, you guys. I just put on removable tattoos whenever I find them.
You should go subscribe to us on YouTube.
Yes.
If you haven't.
We are also there. And then you can see our beautiful faces as we share the most important news of the week.
Yeah, you can just you can listen to the podcast there.
Exactly.
Except
you can
watch
part of our chat.
I'm wearing a very snazzy shirt today.
Yeah, also if you want to see my tattoo, that's great. But also Brent is wearing a really exciting shirt.
Yeah, you can see a tattoo, you can see a snazzy shirt. I tried to do something to my hair. Lila did her makeup. Like we're trying here,
Brent
and it's all for you.
Hair with the backdrop.
Oh yeah, I have a whole set going.
Yeah.
Here.
Yeah. So this.
Yeah.
It's not for us.
I got some books. It's a whole thing.
It's a whole thing. He hung a mirror finally.
I mean, guys, finally. I had this mirror for a year.
Quarantine.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, you'll want to see our smiling faces as we do this. And that's the news this week. And next week, well, we'll have more news.
That's right. We'll have a VP pick.
We'll have a VP pick.
We keep saying that we're going to have one. We've been saying it for weeks, but that's not our fault. That has
nothing to do with us.
Yeah.
We'll talk to you next week.
Bye.
Bye.